We'll speak with Amy Wax, who has one of the most impressive resumes in this country, regardless of what you think of reviews. She's a lawyer, a physician, and an academic who is currently the Robert Moontime Professor of Law at the University of Pennsylvania. In 1975, she graduated near the top of her class at Yale University with a BS in molecular biophysics and biochemistry. She then attended both Harvard Law School and Harvard Medical School, and upon completing medical school, worked as a neurologist in Manhattan throughout the 1980s. Working part-time, she then put herself through Columbia Law School, clerked with one of the most prestigious appellate judges in the country, and then worked for the Solicitor General's office under both the Bush and Clinton administrations, arguing 15 cases before the United States Supreme Court. Since 2001, when she joined the faculty of the University of Pennsylvania Law School, her record of academic accomplishments and awards is far too long to even try to list. Suffice to say, she has been regarded as one of the most prestigious legal scholars in the United States. But now, her career and her tenure are very much in jeopardy. She's the target of disciplinary action by her university, and the dean of the law school has expressed regret that she's still on the faculty and called for major sanctions with termination clearly on the table, meaning tenure apparently is no longer providing protection. A petition has been signed by tens of thousands of people, and local and state lawmakers have written to the university to pressure the university to remove her. There are groups like the Academic Freedom Alliance and FIRE that have made public statements against any move to fire her on the grounds that it violates her right to free expression and would set a speech-chilling precedent even for tenured academics. If Penn proceeds with sanctions or terminations, as expected, Professor Wax has vowed to sue the school. We're very excited to be able to speak with her. This is a crucial case testing the limits of academic freedom in modern day America, and we're happy to invite her on the show and speak to her now. All right, so let's do that again. Professor Wax, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let me just begin by asking you, there was a report in the New York Times last week purporting to report on your case. Where exactly does your case stand in terms of university processes?
Well, mine is seeking to hear about his complaint against me before the Senate, that's the university-wide hearing board, and we're just looking over hearings would be and what the conditions of those hearings would be. And Penn, being in complete control of all of this, is trying to establish procedures that are as damaging and prejudicial to me as possible. And I am trying to establish the procedures that are basically fair so that I will get a fair shake in this whole thing. So that's basically where we are. We don't know when all of this will come down, but probably by the end of the summer, that would be my guess.
So you feel confident that the dean of the law school is devoted to your termination?
No, the dean has been very cagey and very coy about what he's actually trying to do. There's been just a tremendous lack of candor throughout, and as you know, secrecy is the weapon of tyranny, so we're not getting a commitment on that. He's seeking major sanctions. Major sanctions under our faculty handbook can be anything from a slap on the wrist to termination and stripping me of tenure, or anything in between. So it's really not clear what the outcome of all of this stuff will be. And he hasn't even really come out in a candid way. He did say to students a few years ago, he had a secret town hall meeting with students in which he said, quote, "It sucks that Amy Wax is a professor here," and promised them that he was doing his very best to essentially try and get rid of me. So that's pretty much the closest that he's come to showing his cards on this.
So the University of Pennsylvania is a private institution. It's not a state school. It's not run by the government, a lot of questions, a lot of people wonder, well, look, this is a private institution. If the people who run it feel that you are a poor representative of the institution or in some way are doing things prejudicial to its future success, why don't they have the right to simply fire you?
Well, the university is not an ordinary workplace. Okay, first of all, I have tenure. Tenure is a form of protection that has long traditions behind it. I also have an employment contract. And so the real question is, what does tenure protect? One thing that it does protect, or one protection that it does extend traditionally, is the freedom to speak, to express my opinion, to express my opinion outside the school freely as any citizen would. And that is what my dean is attempting to punish me for. So that is a radical transformation of what is generally understood as the protection of tenure. And it isn't just convention. There are statements that have come out of various universities, statements like the Chicago Principles, the Woodward Report, the American Association of University Professors, statements historically that reinforce that understanding of tenure and of the protections of people in the university. And Penn, being a private university, professes to honor those statements, those traditions. In fact, Penn has stated that it honors First Amendment principles, which it doesn't have to do because the First Amendment of the Constitution only applies to the government. But that's a very high degree of protection of my free expression. So once again, the university is not like other workplaces. The one point I would add is that for the university to be true to its nature and do its job, which is to develop knowledge and to preserve knowledge and seek truth, it really does need to allow its members and its professors to speak freely, to debate ideas. It can't censor them or restrict them to an orthodoxy, and that is what my dean is trying to do.
I've always, I've been involved in free speech debates a lot, first as a lawyer, now as a journalist. Definitely find myself, put myself on the more absolutist side of that spectrum, and always emphasize that if there's any place in society, even if you have doubts about the extent of free speech, where we want essentially all ideas to be debatable, it's academia. That's supposed to be one sector of society where all dissent is fair game, where you need at least one place where even the most sacred orthodoxies can be aggressively deconstructed and debated. I guess my question to you is, in terms of your view of tenure and academic freedom, are there limits on it? For example, if a history professor at the University of Pennsylvania was a outright and proud Holocaust denialist, or even, say, a political science professor argued that Nazism was a valid and persuasive ideology, that we ought to recreate concentration camps for Jews and other racial minorities, is there a place where you do draw the line, or is it an absolutist theory that any political or academic views, no matter how extreme and offensive, can never serve as the basis for termination of a tenured faculty member?
Well, it's a little bit complicated, but I guess I'm going to simplify it by saying that I think that the right to debate and express views comes about as close to absolutism as any principle can. And the reason I say that is that when we start making judgments and imposing limits, then we hand the limiter or the judger a very dangerous undue power that quickly slides into censorship. And I am willing, and I think we all should be willing, to bite the bullet and allow people to say things which are really, I guess you would call them extreme, or unwarranted with very little evidence behind them and not penalize them. I want to add, though, that I have never said anything that's even close to that. Okay, I always get the Holocaust denial question. I wouldn't censor or fire a Holocaust denier. I would just ignore him because, frankly, there's no evidence to back him up. It's not an issue worth discussing. There are some issues that are just not worthy of our attention. That is basically how I would present it. But none of the things that I discuss are anything like that. So when it comes to sort of within your academic discipline, when you're doing work within your academic discipline, I think whether you can defend your views and there's evidence behind them becomes an issue, because that is required for quality control within disciplines. But certainly what you say in podcasts or in the media or in your independent writings that's really and should be no business of the university. And certainly these claims we hear today that, this is traumatizing, harmful, and that people's offense is some kind of strange violence or harm, those sorts of tropes have absolutely no place in the university. They take a wrecking ball to academic freedom. Of course, that is by design. They want to destroy academic freedom with that rhetoric. I would absolutely avoid that rhetoric. So, the Supreme Court has recognized some limits to speech, just immediate incitement, slander, libel. They're very limited. They're very, very well defined and stylized. I honor those. Fraud. But anything else, I say, why not? Right? Either ignore it or refute it.
So one of the tactics that's been used to justify the attempt, and I'm not talking here about the dean necessarily, but certainly a lot of people are very explicit about their desire to see you fired, is to try and claim that it isn't just about your public advocacy of ideas, but specific things you've said to students that make it essentially impossible for them to receive fair treatment in the workplace, many of which you've denied, and I want to get to those in a second. But before I do that, I do want to just... Thanks for watching this clip from System Update. Catch our full shows for free, live weekdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on Rumble, and join our locals community at greenwald.locals.com for all of my written journalism, exclusive after-show Q&As, and more.